Alright, in this video we'll be continuing with the C# tutorials. We'll be going over a few concepts. So we'll just talk about controlling a form's tab order. We'll just skim through it. There's a lot of stuff. It's mostly focused on the designer, which I don't really want to talk that much about. So we have when an app is running and the form is displayed. One of the form's control always has a focus. So there's something called a focus. The focus is the control that the focus is on. This does tie into some code, so we'll talk about this more so in a sec. But the control having the focus is the one that receives the user's keyboard input. So the control having the focus is the one that receives the user's keyboard input. For example, when a text box control has the focus, it receives the characters that the user enters on the keyboard. When a button has the focus, so it's not necessarily the keyboard input, it could also be a mouse. I believe so, it can also be the mouse, but again, you can also access this perhaps from a phone. So let's just say mouse, because mouse or keyboard or touchpad, whatever, phone. So when the button has a focus, for example, pressing the enter key or clicking the button executes the button's click event handler. So only controls capable of receiving some sort of input, such as text boxes and buttons, basically interactive controls, may have the focus. So the focus only ties into controls that are back on the screen here, so we'll just have focus. So just for a sec, just a note. So basically, only controls capable of receiving some sort of input, such as text boxes and buttons, may have the focus. So focus basically, back on the screen here, sorry. So I know there's a lot of, I don't have time to make all these PowerPoints and all that stuff, so I'm just telling you guys, audio is good enough to learn. Obviously there's a lot of, there's code and stuff, but I won't be able to explain the notes in PowerPoint slides and all that. Perhaps in the future, if I have more time on the channel, as actually expanding more. But for now, so we just have, we'll just do a few key points here. So focus, just the most important stuff you need to know for C#. So we have the focus is basically, so it relates to controls that are user interactive controls, basically. So these are like buttons, text boxes, as long as there has some kind of interactive click event or something, mouse event, keyboard event or something, some kind of event, perhaps some that we haven't talked about yet, about like a label can also be interactive, you can click it. For example, there's probably other examples, we haven't covered them. We will talk about some more within the next bit. So for example, a radio button or something, which we're going to talk about soon, is obviously clickable because you have to make a selection choice to click. But if you don't select the radio button yet, the focus isn't on the control, so you have to select the control and then the focus will be on the control, so you can tell which control has the focus by looking at the form at runtime. So when a text box control has the focus, a blinking text cursor appears inside it, where the text inside the text box control might appear highlighted. When a button has a focus, a thin dotted line usually appears around the control, kind of like a bounding box or something. That may not always be the case. Actually, perhaps in C# that's the case. That's what they're trying to explain here. So it may not look like a bounding box, but it may just be kind of like a highlighted part of the form. So when an app is running, pressing the tab key changes the focus from one control to another. That's like a shortcut you can use. So the order in which control receives a focus is called the tab order. So when you place controls on a form in csharp.net, the tab order is in the same sequence in which you created the control. So I guess whichever controls you created first in your form, whether in code or drag and drop, it'll have a tab order, such as 0, 1, 2, 3. But in many cases, sometimes you rearrange the tab order. Delete controls, add new ones, rearrange, that can change the tab order, which can also confuse a tab order and stuff like that. I never really use a tab order, to be honest. I don't even use the tab key, even using a Windows PC, but in this case, users want to tab, so this is what the notes say, so users want to tab smoothly from one control to another. Oh, actually, I lied. I've used tab before, but not really, like more so like on a form, like online, like if I'm filling out like a document, like a login page, I'll perhaps tab from first name to last name to password to email to birthday, that kind of thing. I didn't really know you could tab a Windows app, but you can, I guess. So some people may use the tab control to navigate through an app or something. So this is what that is about, basically. So you can modify the tab order by changing a control's tab index property. So you can modify the tab order by changing a control's tab index property. So we haven't talked about this yet, about the tab index property. So the tab index property is a property of a control, like for example the text property. So we'll just drop that down here in the notes. So tab index property contains a numeric value which indicates the control's position in the tab order. Honestly, these notes are fine. Like, comment notes are good enough. You don't need to have a fancy PowerPoint, right? It looks fine. Good enough to learn. Even this will get you through a university class, so it's good enough for sure. Sometimes visuals are nice, but they can also be time consuming. Anyway, so if you actually want to actually learn this, just keep listening to it over and over again. That's the best way. Just play it while you're like, even if you're working out like at the gym or something, just play notes in your ear. That's the best way to study. Listen to them like 24/7. That's what I do anyways. When I have a final, I'll record my notes all like this, like in a video, but just to myself. And then I'll just listen to them while I work out, or if I'm like watching, like if I'm just doing something else, I'll just listen to them. I'll go for a walk and listen to it or something. Alright, so anyways, we have, so basically we have the tab index property contains a numeric value which indicates the control's position in the tab order. Pretty sure that's what I said here. Okay, so that's what I said. So when you create a control, Visual C# automatically assigns a value to its tab index property. So I guess it's auto set in increments starting at 0. So the first one's 0, the second one's 1, and so on 2, 3, 4, and up to whatever infinity, as many as you have. Alright, so we have just a bit more here. So the first control you create on a form has a tab index of 0, the second has a tab index of 1, and so on, as we just said. So we'll just say, continue that here. So tab index in the notes, so tab index starts at 0, then 1, then 2. So it's like an array index or a string index. Pretty much, same thing. Okay, so moving on, so we have, you may change the tab order of a form's control by selecting them. Of a form's controls by selecting them. So you may change the tab order of a form's controls by selecting them one by one and changing their tab index property in the properties window. At least that's the way to do it from the drag and drop. We'll talk about doing it in code later on. An easier method, however, is to click View on the, I'm not sure if Rider has this, but click View on the Visual Studio menu bar and then click Tab Order. They probably do. I'm not sure if you guys can see that here, but let's just see View, View up here. Tab Order. Whoops, sorry, wrong thing. Okay, so appearance. I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but it's, I don't see it here. It's probably hidden somewhere. Could be in one of these extra tabs. I'm sure you could search for it somewhere online or in the Rider docs, or in the Rider search or something. You can always reach out to them if you're really concerned on Facebook, to JetBrains. They'll answer your question within like a week. Usually within like 24 hours. So anyways, we'll just skip that. But if you did do that, if you found tab order in the view menu, this causes the form to be displayed in tab order selection mode. So we'll just skip that, I think. You can basically just set everything really quickly. It just has all your controls, you could quickly number them, 0 to 10 or whatever. So that's pretty much it. So we'll just talk about more now about the focus method, which you can code. So changing the focus with the focus method. So we'll just go down here to the notes. Focus method. Okay, so we have often you want to make sure a particular control has the focus. For example, look at the don't look at this. But basically, okay, so let's just talk about if we have So let's just go to our designer here. This is from the coin thing that we just made in the video series in the playlist, if you're interested in that. So let's just say the purpose of the exit button is to exit. So when the exit button is clicked, basically the form should just close. But basically in code you can move the focus to a control by calling the focus method. So perhaps if you like clicked a coin at the end, you could say, okay, well I want to focus it on the exit button or something. We'll do this, and we're going to do this in the lab probably at some point coming up. So this is how you do it. So the code is this is the general format, or the general notation, whatever. Control name, let's go with camel case, so control name dot focus. So it's just like that. F has a capital C#. So methods in C# will have capital, unlike Java. Will be capitalized basically, unlike Java. So that's pretty much it. Control name is the name of the control. So here, for instance, you can move well, let's just say an example. You can move the focus to a name text box control with this statement. So we'll just write the statement here. So you can say that, or you can just go text box. So just say a text box dot focus. So at some point you want to focus it on the text box for any reason at all. This could be just a way to focus on something. So you just call the control, and then you call the dot operator, and then tag on the focus method to the dot operator with the empty parentheses. This is just, why do we have, so some people might not know, why do you have the empty parentheses at the end? Well, this is for parameters. In this case it doesn't take any, so we just leave it blank like that. So we just void the parameters, which just means it doesn't take any. In C, you might be able to get away with this in C#. That would just be no parameters. You don't really need to do that. In Java you don't. In C it's optional, pretty much, I think. In C#, I don't think you need to do that. You can just leave it like this. You might be able to do both, which means the same thing perhaps. I'm not sure. Safest bet is just to leave them empty if you don't want any parameters in here. Alright, so we have so just moving on from that. So we can have an example here. So this is more in depth example. So we could have, okay, let's just go with let's just go try something here. Okay, yeah, so star comments is like that. So we can have just a nice song on here. So we have so private void. So let's just say we have a clear button example. Click. So we have a private void clear button underscore click, and then it'll take parameter object sender, and then event args e. So we could say here that we just want to clear the text box controls. So we could say that we want like text box 1 dot text to just clear like that, empty string. Make it into an empty string. Let's go text box 2 dot text point to an empty string. Text box 3 text points to an empty string. Oops. So that's it. You get the idea. So we could have just a bunch of different controls setting the text box. The text box is text property to an empty string. And finally, at the end, we could say you want to set the focus to text box. Text box 4. So here we'll say name text box dot focus. That's it. Sorry, not name text box. Text box 4 dot focus. So this sets the focus to text box 4, so you can do that at any point that you want. You could set something's focus to something, or you could set the focus to something. The form's focus to a control. Set the form's focus to some control when you want. That's probably it for now. So in the next one, we'll continue on, perhaps going over some keyboard shortcuts, which we probably don't need to talk that much about. Then we'll get into some color properties, and then finally for some more important. So color properties are important, but then we'll have some more important, basically groups we'll talk about, and panels. I think they call it group boxes and panels. So in Java it's just a group, I think, and a panel, but in C# it's a group box and a panel, which is important. These are containers that you need. So it's the next step in GUI development, so we'll talk about it. So thanks for watching, guys. If you guys like the program, or if you guys like the video, you can like and subscribe to support the channel. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.